This is a very exciting topic. I think every day I hear a new topic or a new thing around generative AI, and I'm very excited to have not only myself here, but our list of panelists, which we've got quite extensive experience throughout. We've got Martin Miller, who is an accomplished product development professional with over 2 decades of experience across software development and online operations management. Martin is currently the interim CTO at Fastco. We've got Noelle Russell, leading global AI solutions specialist at Accenture, and is responsible for enterprise scale industry playbooks for generative AI, large language models. In this role, she leads the development of global AI solutions across cloud providers, including Microsoft, Amazon, and their ecosystem, and leads teams around inclusive engineering with the promise of responsible AI at scale. And finally, Dr. Itai Orr is a generative AI researcher with publications in top-tier AI journals such as Natural Science. He has over 15 years of experience in machine learning, computer vision, signal processing, and autonomous driving from several automotive and defense companies. Previous roles include VP of Technology at Autobrains, CTO at Ysense Technologies, co-founder and CEO at Aerial Guard. Dr. Orr holds a PhD in AI, Master of Computer Science in Physics, and a Bachelor of Science in Aerospace Engineering. And finally, myself, I'm a passionate technologist with over 22 years experience in leading software development solutions. Currently, I'm the SAP Global Head of Innovation at PwC, but I'm also involved in several other foundations, including the TinyML Foundation, which I lead the Asia side, but definitely very keen and supportive of the whole AI topic in general. But I thought I'd start the panel, and I thought I'd start some questions. And please, if you have any questions, please add them to the chat. I'd be happy to ask the broader panel on some of these questions. But the first one I thought I'd focus around is around demystifying generative AI. And so the conversation about generative AI in the public discourse is misunderstood. What is generative AI, and is there a layered landscape? And also we've got to think, what isn't generative AI? So maybe I'll start this with maybe Martin, because he's done some really interesting work recently, and Noelle maybe get some insights from me once Martin answers. So Martin, over to you.
You know, first of all, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants and the fellow panelists. It's very early morning for me. I am here in the San Francisco Bay Area of California in the USA. So a lot of people are talking about generative AI as revolutionary, and it is. It is very significant and has been measured akin to parallel to the advent of the internet. Well, I can't agree with that exactly, but I'll give it kudos for riding on top of the network fabric. Without the network fabric, we wouldn't all be here. So that is at the core of how we got to where we're going, is starting with the network fabric. Gen AI is enabling the imagination for creating solutions that, let's say 20 years ago, we still would have believed was fiction today, and we're able to actually show proof of it. And some of the fun things that you can do with it actually are to build real sustainable businesses with some guardrails and protection, and how you acquire, train, and run your solution. You can definitely build some fun stuff. So I'm with a couple firms as a technical advisor. One I'm super excited about is called Hive TA Technologies, and is enabling the next generation of chatbot assistant for tax professionals. And we are rocking the world with how we're using Gen AI to give out technical solutions for tax preparers and financial professionals. There's a couple other companies I'm in support of. I'm under NDA, I can't discuss, but generally speaking, if you try to use the public network to do something with a GTP model out there publicly, you're going to need guardrails and some other piece of technology to keep yourself within some sort of compliance safety measure. But super excited to be in this world.
That's a great, it's a great answer there, Martin, and I love that you've brought in the term guardrails. I heard there was a head of our Australian tax office. So I'm in Australia. For me, it's midnight, so it just shows you from where it is, different places around the world. But he stated that generative AI for a long time, as technical professionals, we've always heard that data is the new oil. And he put this term in it, and it's really resonated with me. He goes, with generative AI, data is the uranium. And the reason why I think he said that is because, uranium is obviously very powerful, can power a whole city. But if you don't have the right guardrails in place, right, uranium can blow and cause all kinds of trouble, right? So I think that, and I think that's also something which you could apply here in this space, because it is, if you've got the right guardrails in place, you will definitely get a good result. But if you don't, it will generate things that might mislead. And I mean, we'll go into other terms. There's like hallucinating and creating things that don't exist. But it really does require that kind of governance in place in order to try and make sure you're getting a good result. So that was a really great answer, Martin. So thanks for that. Noelle, I'm just wondering if you're on, and if you have your view of what it is, considering your extensive experience also with Microsoft and some of the other companies you've been with as well.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm definitely on. Here I am. Thank you. Great to meet you both. This is exciting. And thank you for everyone and your comments. It's great to see where everyone's coming from. I feel terrible because it's like 9 something in the morning. So I'm like in a nice, comfortable, just, woke up, had breakfast, and a very normal. So thank you both for your commitment to the cause. Yeah, as you said, I think, I'm very excited about generative AI. I was 10 years ago, I was invited to become one of the very first members of the Amazon Alexa team, and helped build it from nothing, similar to where ChatGPT was maybe a few years ago, from an idea, and get into over 100 million homes. And the incredible journey that we went on in trying to do that, and lots of failures, testing our code in production and all those types of things. So excited to talk about that. One of the things I'm doing today, and actually I was brought to Accenture to help launch the generative AI practice there. And the very first thing we did was exactly like you said, Martin, right? The very first thing we did is say, okay, how do we protect ourselves from our own enthusiasm, and how do we protect our clients from their enthusiasm and ours? And so those, just like you said, those guardrails are really important. But I also have realized, and that's why I'm excited about the conversation today, is that we've built very specific industry capabilities, and there are different things we can do. There we go. There are different things we can do across different industries. Right now, I don't see any moment where someone, when I get into an organization, help them leverage generative AI, where they think to themselves, gosh, I'm worried this AI will take my job. To your point, Martin, like, we're not really at like this situation where we have AI acting like a human and autonomous and able to take over entire jobs. What we do see, though, is a really great capability for us to reduce what we call the drudgery or the minutia that humans have to deal with every day, from email triaging. And I don't mean spam, I mean actual figuring out, do I need to read one of the 29,000 unread emails in my inbox, to PowerPoint creation, to like RFP creation, like all of these things that take hours and hours of our time, where we're much better at actually the human part of that. Like, how do I take that idea and share it? How do I disclose and create discourse? I'm working a lot with our education system here in the United States about how we change the rubric for even education. Like, I don't actually need them to fill out forms and check boxes on a worksheet. I actually want to hear, like, can you discuss, if ChatGPT generated your answer? Great. Now explain it to me. Tell me why that's right, why it's wrong, where it got its answer. So I think there's kind of an evolution of humanity that will happen as a result of this technology. And it's very, very exciting. But I also think, one of the responsible AI things that we maybe will talk about today is that with all of this great capability comes, of course, this over-reliance on this technology, right? So those who are not literate, that don't understand the capabilities that we're going to talk about today, like, they are going to end up over-relying on it. And just like you both had mentioned earlier, like, that over-reliance, it becomes a disaster. Like, we end up thinking, oh, it must be true because it's AI, or I must use it because it's AI. And the reality is that it's very much a discernment activity for the humans in the loop. And that's us. every one of us on this call. So super excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. Yes, so thanks.
That's a great response. And I love, you mentioned human in the loop, right? That's something which we've always got to take into consideration. Everything we do here is for us, and we need to govern it. We need to make sure that whatever technology provides us, it's right, and we've got to make sure that it's looking after people as well. And also like the point that you also made there around responsible AI, and I guess around the whole idea of people saying, currently a lot of AI is black box, right? We get this answer, we trust it, right? How did we get that answer? How's this data being trained? How, who's responsible for that? And I think that's where, with the right things in place, we don't have to worry so much about, the issue, I guess the results that we get from generative, and we can trust what it can do. But thank you, and very excited to have you, and thanks for a great response there. So really appreciate it. Finally, I think, we've got Itai as well from another part of the world. So we've got everyone from all different parts of the world. So Itai, would you want to come out and give your view on generative AI?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So hello, everyone. I'm here from Israel this time. And I'd like to I'd like to answer the part that, the second part of your question, what isn't Gen AI and what differentiates between regular AI and Gen AI. So AI is a broad name, and generative AI is a subtopic of AI. We've had AI come up to the scene a few decades ago, and about 10 years ago, 2012, the modern version of deep neural network came out, and that really spurred the rapid expansion of AI as we call it today. So there are different capabilities for AI and deep neural networks. Up till I would say the last gen revolution, it was mainly tasks like classification, detection of objects, segmentation. I would say it's pretty simple stuff compared to what Gen AI is being capable today, but it generates a lot of value. And if we look at what happened in the last, I would say 2 to 3 years with large language models, or I would say large models in general, you can really partition it into 2 groups. One is the large models. I would say it would take very large deep neural networks with many parameters. We are today, the state of the art is in the tens and hundreds of billions of parameters. It takes many GPUs to train them and to inference them on them. You train them on extremely large data sets. And the main theme is scalability. You want the largest model, you want the largest data set, you want to clean them, you want to make your data set as fine as possible. But scale is the goal. On the other hand, you have narrow AI or specialized AI. And that is different from Gen AI. That I would say constitute we can call it the regular AI, not the Gen AI. And this will be small models, small neural networks, very specific and very dedicated into specific tasks. And as we go along in the conversation today, we can give a few examples and explore what the difference is between narrow and general AI.
No, thank you. That is I really like that answer, especially because, you're right, there's different kinds of AI. And, there's the whole idea of specialized AI, which, we probably would go into, and also more general artificial intelligence, right, as well, which, everyone has this view one day, that will have this general AI or the singularity, right, where humanity and technology will come together. So we're not there yet, but it should be interesting to see how we go in that sense. But I guess, a lot of us, we're from industry, and we hear, generative AI being spoken a lot. Martin, you mentioned that you're doing something interesting around tax. I'd love to, maybe we'll bring that up in this discussion here as well. But your work, you've done some amazing work in, mobility, being able to autonomous vehicles, and I would love to know a little bit more, and if generative AI plays a role in there, and Noelle, at Accenture, you probably you're doing systems implementation of some of the biggest companies in the world. It'd be good to get a bit of a view there as well. But maybe we'll start. I'll go backwards this time. I'll start with Itai, and then we'll move on. So yeah.
Sure. So I'll give you examples on how AI has penetrated the mobility sector. Mobility is, I would say, a group of the autonomous vehicles, ADAS, safety measures for regular vehicles, and other robotics applications. And the main theme in mobility is the sensors. Okay, so we're talking about industries and markets which have sensors such as cameras, radars, lidars, IMUs, GPS. The data itself is pretty similar across those industries. And when you look at what happened after 2012, and especially in the last few years, AI has really replaced all or most of the previous methods to do the tasks. Tasks such as perception. Perception is the ability to understand what I'm looking at. In every mobility or smart mobility application, you have several components. You have your sensing, your camera, your radar. On top of that, you have your perception. And perception is understanding what I'm looking at. Am I looking at a road? Am I looking at a tree? Is it a person? Is it a vehicle, etc.? So today, perception is synonymous with AI. And most of the state-of-the-art systems are based on neural networks. Not all of them are based on generative large language models based type of networks, because it really depends on the application. And that is where the narrow comes in, because in a lot of robotics application, we have what we call the edge compute. The computation itself is done on the platform. It's not done on the cloud on large servers. You don't have that much of compute. So you're not able to utilize very, very, very large networks. So you have to optimize them like really, really, really tiny. And that throws you to a very, very different area of the design of how the network looks and what the data set would look like, the training regime, etc. And on top of the perception, you have your planning. Planning is deciding where I want my car to go. Do I want it to give way? Do I want to traverse the intersection? Do I want the robot to traverse the steps, etc.? And the planning. Today, planning is mostly done with a combination of rule-based and reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning is another aspect or another type of machine learning algorithms. In Gen AI, you do use reinforcement learning to train parts of the model. In generative AI, especially in large language models, you train them in multiple steps. One of them is reinforcement learning.
No, that's great. No, that's and it's definitely some of the other terms. I've done a little bit of work of when it comes down to edge models as well, right? Because you're right. Sometimes, especially when these sensors and you need that real-time kind of reaction, right? Especially around autonomous vehicles, you don't have time for it to be sent to the cloud to be processed and then come back, right? So it needs to be processed then and there, and that's why there's I know there's another term called federated machine learning as well, right? Where we can do some of the learning at the core and then send it back to a core to learn and then push back. But that's some really interesting insight there. So thanks, Itai, on that. I'll then go, Noelle, back to you, see what your thoughts on this particular topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I've had, of course, 10 years ago was when I joined Alexa, and things were very different then. I always say it was like AI the hard way. We didn't know then, but we were building a foundation model, right, that would eventually turn into Amazon's Lex and a bunch of other services that were built off of that original model. And that original model was actually very small and broken most of the time, honestly. And that is often where many of our clients start, right? Many companies will start with a small model that's meant to solve a very specific task. And again, Alexa's job was to be an assistant in the kitchen, really for affluent bachelors. Like that was the persona we went after. However, very quickly, and as every client we have will eventually sees, is that you want to now expand that capability, and your clients, your customers will actually drive that expansion, right? They'll be like, oh my gosh, it's great. I love the timers, but what about music? And what about mindfulness? And what about, helping my kids with their homework? Like all of a sudden your clients will push, not only your clients, but your employees as well, but they will push what they want this AI to do for them. And that's why after Alexa, I went to Microsoft and helped launch 17 research models into production. And that same process was done, a process I see repeated in every company today, which is, okay, we've got these ideas, right? Everyone's got good ideas. We've even maybe built a POC, but how do we productize that? How do we get it into a market? How do we get customers? How do we get users? And so building AI, leveraging a lot of what you had mentioned. How do you say your name? Itai?
Yeah, Itai.
Itai. Oh, I was almost there. Itai. So I loved what you were saying, because many times, we really want to start with the problem and then like work backwards from that. And that generative AI might be the hammer that you use to hit that nail, but it very well might actually be traditional AI. It might be computer vision. It might be computer vision with a nice generative AI front end. We want to encourage people to reinvent solutions as if they've never solved the problem before. Because when you think like that, you can now take advantage of this technology as opposed to trying to put band-aids on things you built 5 years ago that honestly, the technology is obsolete. It will take you longer. So I just wanted to mention 2 industries that we've seen the most traction. One, and it's less an industry and more use case because I've done it in finance and in healthcare and in retail, but the concept of contact center, and many of you probably understand this, right? Like who's answering the phones. And the good news is, you should know this, like the CEOs of the Fortune 100, they are not saying, okay, some of them are, but most of them are not saying, hey, I want to cut costs and get rid of people. Like they actually want to increase the funnel. They want more of their contact center people talking to more people. The more the people they talk to, the more people they're helping, the more customers they get, the bigger the funnel, the more revenue they generate. And so in this situation, we're actually leveraging generative AI to do a few things, right? One, most of us have been on a call where we're like immediately like representative, or hitting the 0 button on the phone or whatever to try and get out of whatever IVR or chat service that we're in. But those worlds are changing. And so how do I, if I'm an agent, I want to know more about where my customer has been. Have they been on the call? Were they on the website? Did they talk to the chatbot? How do I get that data? Has already been collected for like 10 years. We've been collecting this data, maybe more in some cases. How do we actually use that? And then once we have it, how do we use a generative model? And it doesn't have to be generative. The benefit of generative AI is that it's one model that can do a bunch of things. So I can use it to do sentiment analysis. I can use it to listen to a call and identify entities in that transcript, right? Or in the call as it's happening. All these things making it easier for the agent to focus on the problem they're solving and move away from typing in summaries, doing lookups for information. Like those are the things that irritate an agent, honestly. They're like, can you just tell me what I need to know so I can help this customer? And so that's what we're seeing a lot of, a huge amount of traction and opportunity in companies to actually change their bottom line, right? We're in a pretty interesting time in our economy, but generative AI is going to add trillions of dollars to the global economy, but only if you tap in, and only if you tap in at the right time with the right technology solution for your company. And so we've seen contact center be one of those interesting areas.
Fantastic, thanks. And I totally agree. I think that contact center, also because, as you said, we've got years of data, right? So we can pre-train it, we can give it that particular answer. So yeah, that's definitely a great area. I guess finally, Martin, look, you got me caught as well with this whole using, the Hive and tax, right? Geez, tax is something which I think even tax people don't like doing. So exactly, very, yeah. What are your can you tell us about how I mean, maybe some of the product projects you've been done, but definitely like to hear more around Hive and what you've done there.
Sure, I'd love to. First off, I worked on contact center software for a major software company once, and I remember the days of push 1 for someone that cares, push 2 for someone to be rude. So I can appreciate the advances of Gen AI today and how that can apply. Before I jump into Hive, there's some valuable, to Noelle's comment, there's valuable learning from analysis of video that's used, and training and development is a great application, like teaching your sales reps or anybody that's customer facing how to deliver the right messaging. And you can use Gen AI to do sentiment analysis. And are they on point, and grade them and share back with them so they can improve. So that's a really good example, and has a low risk of public exposure because you're using it for training and development, which I find very valuable. If you want to use public services, though, of generative AI, that is the open elements of ChatGPT, for example, via API, you're going to have some concerns. You want to worry about privacy and training that model with data it shouldn't be receiving, personally identifiable information. So at Hive, now I'll step back in, we have a dual solution where we actually have a mini model and an open AI model. And we work with localized trained data and mask the private data, and on top use the open AI solution to help meld solutions back to the professional tax associate. And it's really kind of unique. We believe we're the first mover in this. And I was at the IRS conference last week, or actually earlier this week, excuse me, it's been a long week. And it was fun to listen to actual tax practitioners, enrolled agents, CPAs, financial planners, grill us on, is AI going to take our job? And say, no, AI is not taking your job. However, professionals using AI may take your customers away because they're going to give better solutions. So I'm going to give a slight plug. There's a commercial solution that's helpful for those that want to use an open AI type solution. There's a company called 𝐀𝐩𝐸𝐸 that helps you evolve a solution while masking out the data. It's very nicely done. There's a couple of solutions like that. And then you can mask all that private data, then use an open AI solution and come back with another set of information that is actually valuable for output. So I put that plug out there because a lot of people are worried about how do I keep PII out of the training of things where it shouldn't be training. So I just throw that out for my audience to be aware that Gen AI is good, and under the right constraints can be very, very safe.
Thanks, Seth. Great answer there. Okay, maybe what I'll start doing is taking, because I see some people are now happy to chat and put some questions in there. I see actually Noelle's already answered one.
Trying to
which is
multitask.
yeah, well done. You're on it. You're quick, which is good. Forget generative AI. You're faster than that. So
Noelle GPT.
I was going to say, how could a monopoly in the AI industry affect AI progress, ethics, and bias? What measures can be taken to prevent this? But I'll let you start, Noelle. So let's go with that.
Yeah, I'll go very briefly since my answer is in the chat, and I'd love to hear the perspective, Martin and Itai, from your perspective. But I think oftentimes we think of the world of like OpenAI and ChatGPT, like they did such a great job of launching this incredible marketing campaign where the whole world got consumed by that model. And I think, Itai, you mentioned this at the very beginning, like it's really it's a very small piece of the big AI pie. However, they have the world's attention. And so I understand your tendency to say like, oh, there's a monopoly, or what do we do if one company owns this? But we actually are seeing, when you kind of scratch beneath that surface and you start looking at all of the providers, it's actually one of the most heterogeneous spaces around right now. As a matter of fact, everyone and their brother and sister are going out and building custom models and delivering them in an open source way on GitHub. I get new models every day in my LinkedIn. Like, I built this model that does this fine-tuned thing, and great. So now I actually have the opposite problem of whatever the opposite of a monopoly is. So I'm less worried about that. But I will say very quickly, the leadership of these big companies, the cloud providers that are hosting all of these models, because not all of us can just grab a GPU off of our desk and use it. There is a concern. Luckily, we do have some pretty humble leaders right now. Andy Jassy, I know personally. Satya Nadella, I know personally. Like, they are good people. But they're good people in a role and like are one day away from winning $1 billion lottery ticket and being like, I don't need to do this anymore, right? So what happens when they leave and a Steve Ballmer kind of person comes in, or, what happens when that leadership changes? So that is my biggest concern right now, is that the leader, the guardrails you're talking about, Martin, are very much owned by people in positions that are not permanent, and they're not sustained by any kind of regulation or government. So it could change at any time. And that does concern me.
Thanks, Noelle. Well, Itai, maybe jump over to you because yeah, give your view on that one.
Yeah, sure. So I think AI needs to be divided into several components. We've talked about the software side, the algorithm side, and like Noelle said, there's a sort of like a war between the open source and the closed source solution. Closed source will be the name is misleading, but OpenAI is closed. It's a closed solution. And you have Meta really pushing the open source with the Llama 2, and other type of models that are completely open for consumer and even commercial use. And you do see a battle between the closed solutions and the open solutions. And that which is preferred, it really depends on the application. It really varies. You might not need the heavy lifters and the really expensive inference and the really big models for your application, but you might do. So today you really need to test various solutions. And like Noelle said, there's too many. So I'll take the top 10 and then decide from there. But that is the situation today. So it's a really, I would say, open grounds, and the winner has not been decided yet. There are emerging winners, but it's not been decided yet. So it's very interesting to follow. But that's on the software side. On the hardware side, there's a real monopoly. NVIDIA is controlling the market by a very large margin. Today, most of the applications in AI and Gen AI are being trained on NVIDIA GPUs. There are alternatives, but they're not as common. And I think that in most cases, it boils down to the decision you as a CTO or whoever is responsible in that company to make that decision. You need to build a data center with hundreds or tens of millions of dollars, and you need to bet on a specific hardware. So usually that decision boils down to playing it safe and keeping with NVIDIA. There are emerging competitors, but I would say NVIDIA reigns supreme to the foreseeable future on the hardware side. On the data side, it's even more interesting, in my opinion. The data is like you guys said in earlier parts of the conversation. Data is what separates the good and the bad. And it's garbage in, garbage out in AI, and especially in Gen AI. If you train it on low fidelity, very bad data, you'll get bad results, even if your model is huge and you know everything what you're doing. But if your data set is really fine-tuned, it's filtered, it's in high quality, then you have a shot. So it's really like data itself is oil in the ground. If you have good data pipelines, if you have efficient labeling processes, if you are filtering correctly, then it's usable oil. Now put it in your car and drive. So I would say data is extremely interesting in the sense that proprietary data might give you an edge in your specific industry, and it varies from industry to industry, but data can give you an edge. And I would say data is the biggest moat any company can have going forward, because the algorithm, like Noelle said, they're public. And you might have, a fine-tuned algorithm, or your model is a bit better, but you cannot beat very high-quality data.
No, that's great. Yeah, look, and again, data being key, right? I also like your view. I think we read today, or I read today, the CEO of NVIDIA made $6.5 billion overnight because the stocks went up that high, right? They're riding a great wave at the moment. And to me, that sounds like a great place for competition, but it's hard. They've got such a lead, yeah, everyone I know, even when I was training, the CUDA chipset, models and stuff like that, because it's been optimized for machine learning models. So that's definitely going to be an interesting space. And I think, even with what Noelle mentioned before, the amount of, I actually presented earlier this week on generative AI, and I had a whole page filled of all the generative AI companies, right? And it'll be a fight, I think, at some point, because certain will be acquired, certain companies won't have enough money, and we'll see by the end, as you said, I think you'll see at the end there'll be some clear leaders and who will take position in that space. But finally, Martin, I'll hand over to you as well, just to give your view on that particular topic. Yeah.
My goodness. Well, my panelists are so strong in this area, and it's fun to listen and shake my head. Yes, I agree. But let me take it a little more in a interesting analogy sense. I see this whole Gen AI world as like a new gold rush. I'm a Californian. I live in California. I know the gold rush from the 1800s. Well, not many people actually found gold or found enough gold to do anything with. So there's also what I call the fool's gold rush, which is looking for solutions or using the screwdriver where they need a hammer, or a power screwdriver where they need something else. And yes, you have a power tool, but is that power tool appropriately applied? Is there something there to be done? Is it applicable? If you have market fit, put aside and understood, and you're alone in the market, that's a wow factor. And if you have market fit and you have 20,000 competing solutions, you have to look around you and start wondering, one of us is not surviving, one or more of us is not surviving, and how do you push ahead? And that's what you're seeing right now. So having, yet another open source large language model pushed at me is a problem, and expecting to be funded on it. Because I also, another plug with a Israeli venture firm called 𝐀𝐻𝐸𝐿, and we get to look at very unique solutions, and data is the gold. So solutions around that data are what I'm extremely interested for finding those solutions, and that is going to be a clear winner in this race.
Good answer. Great. So I'll keep going down, and I see there's another question from Sayan, and I see Noelle's already jumped on there too as well. But how do we leverage Gen AI in the training industry to create training content and yet make it interesting and interactive enough? Martin, I know you just started, but I'll go straight to you, and then we'll go backwards. Yep.
Sure. So there's several aspects of the training that we can talk about. Let's say it's internal to a corporate world, and I need to train a function. You can use video and play videos for people to learn, and then have the people basically reply and go through a series of prompts to then show what they've learned, and use video analysis after that to converse and basically determine, it sounds like they're on the right path and they're hitting all the salient points. That example I made earlier was with a specific company that I'm advising to that's in training and development, and for salespeople, outbound salespeople, so they get the message and nail it every time. So that's one really great application that's commercialized and will work well.
Right. Yep. Thanks. Itai, do you want to? What's your view on training? Generative AI and training.
Yep. I'll answer a bit more broadly. I would say that when you're developing or creating a Gen AI system, you have several key topics that you have to keep in mind. One is the fidelity or data fidelity of your answer. Is it coherent? Is it within my guardrails? Is it not hallucinating? Is it in a sense of text? In a sense of images? Is the image in a photorealistic like I want it? Is in the style that I want it, et cetera, et cetera. So when considering the training industry, I would say that one key aspect is to look at multiple modalities at once, because usually training of people will be helpful using multiple modalities, both text and image, both voice, text, and image, or other types of data. So multimodality generative AI is an active research topic. It's less mature than a single modality. Obviously, it's harder and it's more technical difficult. And it's extremely interesting for the training industry to look at multimodality generative AI. That's one aspect. Another aspect of training is the controllability how do I get the model to do exactly what I want? And actually, that is one of the most harder aspects of creating such a system. Making the model do a very, very, very specific things is sometimes it's very hard, and it sometimes comes at the expense of other capabilities of that specific model. So if I want something that is a very high quality fidelity of prediction of the output from the model, and I want the ability to control it very specifically, sometimes it comes one at expense of the other. And lastly is the creativity. That's like the third part of creating a system. How do I make the model be extremely creative when I want it to be creative? How do I generate the content in an interesting and interactive way? Here, turns out that large language modules excel, and they are really good at being very creative. A task that we once thought it would be very hard for a machine, turns out that creativity is something that is the AI, current Gen AI excels at. So sometimes even keeping the capability of being very creative and then answering the fidelity and controllability part. So I would say that those are the areas that I would look at.
Right. Thanks. And finally, Noelle, what your view on this topic? I know that you've been typing away as well, so go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll just there was another similar question, actually talks about adoption, right? Like now that we've heard from Martin and Itai, like all these great ideas, like how do we actually get an L&D team to do this work, to leverage this technology? I 100% agree. Like I love the multimodality is actually where that's where I push the hardest, because so many of us learn in different ways, right? Not just the typical audio or kinesthetic or right, like these types of things, but some of us like to read PowerPoints and some of us want to hear a podcast. We want to hear it kind of acted out. Like there's lots of different ways that we learn, and these models can actually be trained on the brand and tone of a company. They can be grounded in the truth of the knowledge management system in a company. All of that starts with an experiment. And all of us started in research, right? If we're in AI, we start with experimentation. We start with a hypothesis. And it's so one of the main things is to really shift the mindset of your L&D team to think, how can we create just a small little piece of our world that does these experiments? Because when you start experimenting, and I call it learning by doing, when you start experimenting, you uncover some things that are very low-hanging fruit where you're like, wow, we could do that right now. Why wouldn't we just do that? And that's how many of these projects start, is they start with some small experiment or hypothesis. We often will send a note out to the entire company. We did this at Accenture, 750,000 people. And we're like, what ideas do you have? And this is what I would tell you not to do. When you send this email, do not put anyone's email, like a person's email, like send it to a box. But I was one of the 3 people email on that email. And I saw all of these ideas. So then the next thing is like, how do you prioritize that work? So I think it's really, it's an exciting time for you to think about, how do we not think, how do we productize this? How do we make money from this? But just how do we experiment? How do we play safely and responsibly in the context of L&D or learning and development? And you'll find more and more, especially ChatGPT, helped us all get a little bit more comfortable with playing with technology we don't fully understand.
Yeah.
So I think more and more organizations are willing to do that. So thanks, Malavika, for the question. It was right in alignment with this, so I thought I'd bring it in.
Beautiful. No, that's great answer there as well. And I'm conscious of time because we're getting close to the hour. But I think there's a lot of different questions, and thank you. I guess the panelists been answering there in real time as they pop up. Including people getting worried about generative AI taking jobs, which I think we mentioned before. It's not about taking jobs, it's about utilizing the tool so you're the best at your job, and hopefully do others. But I think obviously, since this is a training company as well, a lot of people are saying, where do I get started? How do I start? If I want to start learning more about generative AI, where do I start? And it'd be good to get your view. And since you're on screen, let's start with you, Noelle. What's your view in getting started in this world?
Oh, absolutely. So like I said, the best thing to do is learn by doing. Most courses, and there's 2 steps to it, right? One is just, how do you get started? How do you kind of demystify, kind of how we started this panel, right? How do we demystify AI? How do we realize how it's going to be helpful? And there's lots of free resources to do that. But what I look for in these free classes is like, which ones are going to help me put my fingers on a keyboard and actually play around with these things. And when I say that, I don't mean you have to know how to code. I just mean it's practical, right? Like you're actually going to do something, build something. And when you build, it's really, really quite impressive. And so there's an organization, deeplearning.ai, that you can go to. They're all free. It's not meant to be productized, but the next thing, like once you've figured it out and you're like, okay, I really actually want to do this, I want to do it for a living, then comes certification. And I don't know if I hope you saw it, but at the very beginning, we talked about like, this is one of the first organizations that actually created a Gen AI professional certification. And it is worthwhile to get it. I am one of those people, I never graduated from high school here in the US. I didn't finish college. I didn't really like school, but certs I could get like, so I get every cert I can. And it helps companies realize that when it comes down to it, I know how to do the work. And that's what you need to prove these days. We're less worried about, you getting a 4-year degree in statistics, unless you want to be an academic that does research on AI models and builds them from scratch. But for practitioners that want to help the world in business applications, getting these certifications can really open the doors for you.
Right. Great answer there, Noelle. Thanks for that. Itai, might go over to you. If you wanted to start, where would you start again?
I totally agree with Noelle. I think it was a very good answer. There's a very big difference between creating those tools and then using them. It's totally two different things. If you're interested, if you're interested in creating those tools, then yeah, you need the academia, you need the degrees, you need to learn it. You should read a lot of research papers. I read research papers on a daily basis. And one of the hardest things in Gen AI is the rapid progress of things, and you really need to read a lot. But you only need to do that if you want to create those systems. If you want to use it, then absolutely, I don't see the point, honestly. I would start, like Noelle said, get your hands dirty, download the programs, sign up to ChatGPT, start talking to it, go to a DALL-E or Midjourney, start playing with the camera modality, and start figuring out where it works best for you. How can you use it? What doesn't work, and where it can improve, and then how you can adapt it to your specific interest and use case. So I don't think that people should be very afraid of it, because it's really day and night between using those systems and creating those systems.
Great, great response. And Martin, finally to you, your view on getting started in this world.
I'll keep it simple and hold up my device. This is actually ChatGPT on my phone. I typed "Hello World" and ChatGPT replied, "How can I assist you today?" So go ahead and download ChatGPT and use it in place of your name that search company search, and see how that works for you, and ask it questions that are relevant. And then there are some things that you can go off and academically learn or get a certificate for, but there's a lot of tutorials on how to give prompts and how to ask questions. And, and if you're trying to write something, ChatGPT or Bard, I'm more favorable to, is a great way to skeleton write an outline for you, a task list, etc. Wonderful tool. Play with it. It's not going to kill you. It's just text coming back at you.
Right. No, really appreciate it. Thanks, Martin. And look, thanks to all the panelists for their insights here. I think we've had some great answers, and for all the people who joined as well, some great questions being put up there. Lecky, I'll hand back to you as we've hit the hour. But yeah, thanks everyone once again. And yeah, hopefully you can join us in the next seminar.
And thanks to our amazing host. Thank you, Nicholas.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Reining us in. So thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.